Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story and we put the spotlight on you. Hello there, this is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. Someone encouraged and inspired this host, a former lawyer, gambler, inmate, and his life was transformed. The same can happen to you. When you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this ministry with a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. Check out my website and see what I offer that can be encouraging, inspiring, and transforming for you. I'm available for speaking engagements, in person and virtual seminars, so please contact me through my website, www.dealbyme.com. I have with me Deb Curtis, who, after a successful career of 30 years, decided to support other women in starting their own businesses. In 2018, she created her own small business to do just that. And throughout Deb's career, she noticed how women and people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds often face extra challenges. She believes that these diverse individuals bring unique and valuable ideas to the world of business. That's why she works hard to help them get the recognition and opportunities they deserve. We're thrilled, we're excited, and it is with great joy and a pleasure to have Deb come and share with us today. So, Deb, please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and where you've been interviewed from. And we will get into a good conversation just about you and what you're doing. Your profile is so very interesting. I detect from your profile that you do have a spiritual background, and so obviously being a um, former pastor, a retired pastor, I should say, almost 33 years at the same church, is just interesting to interview somebody who I feel a real connection to. So, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're being interviewed from today?
I sure will. Dr. James, first and foremost, thank you for having me here. Um, I love your t-shirt today, encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. Wow. Powerful words, and we all have a story to tell. We all have a story to tell. And my story, I'm able to be more open about it because I am no longer in corporate America. So therefore, I guess you could say my corporate chains are free. And I spoke in corporate America about my feelings and such as to what I was witnessing and dealing with. And we'll get into that later. And I spoke up, but it put a target on my back. And we'll get to that later in the show. But so who is Deb Curtis? Oh boy, she's a girl that has heart and wears that heart on her sleeve. Youngest of three daughters, raised by her parents. They were very young, abandoned by her mom back when she was 10 years old for 18 months. And then my father won custody of me in the 70s, which was a difficult feat for him because in the 70s, most judges would always grant custody to the mom. It just was the norm that mom should take care of the kids if there was a divorce. And it took me to stand up in front of a jury, because that's how long this trial went, to testify against my mom with her attorneys on their side of the courtroom and my dad on the other. And by that time I was 12 and my dad won custody. And this is not the subject today, but I do want to share with your audience that COVID of 2020, my mom and I reunited after almost 50 years of her not being in my life. I had to take her in and forgive her. And she lived with us for about 6 months. And now she lives across town. And I take care of her now because she needs me. And I forgave her. And that's beautiful. So there's that story. Then when that was over with in my life, when I was 12, I lived with my dad. And I was able to walk to high school, and he just taught me, Dr. James, to work hard at anything I do, and I can climb the ladder of success and be anybody that I wanted to be when I grew up. However, money was very frugal. We didn't have much, and I was not granted the opportunity to attend college. My senior year, I remember in high school, everybody was talking about, where are you going to school? Where are you going to school? And I wasn't. I was the girl that waited in line in school back then for a certain colored hot lunch ticket that was free because the district paid for it. And people knew in school that I came from a very broken family and was poor. And you can say there were times that I was bullied for that. It just seemed like you just weren't accepted unless you were a child that dressed the part, was in the right hot lunch line, and was going to school. I took that frustration, Dr. James, and hurt, and said, I'm going to work hard in corporate America and prove to them that I can do just as much, if not more, without that college education on a piece of paper called a resume. And many of my peers, I remember back in my 20s, they all went to school, and however they paid for it, mom and dad or what have you, a lot of them just never moved on with their careers. So maybe some stayed at home to be a mom. Maybe some just didn't want to work hard because everything was given to them, but nothing was given to me. So I kept working hard. My first corporate job, professional of 18 years, I was a woman that was doing the same amount of work and a top performer in comparison to my male counterparts. And I wanted to get promoted, Dr. James. I thought, well, I want to get promoted. And I was told no for 2 reasons. And this was back in the 90s. So we're moving along Deb's journey in life. I was told no, even though I was a top performer and exceeding my peers that were white men, their results. They said, because I'm a woman, they can't promote me. And because I do not have a college education on that piece of paper. It was a finance company. I worked in finance, and we helped people that had secondary personal credit issues, and they were looking to reestablish their credit and obtain car loans through the company that I worked for 18 years. So I continue to positively remain persistent with my white male management team, telling them I'm doing all of the work that my peers do. Why can't I be promoted? Finally, they agreed. They said, Deb's not going to go away. So let's put her on a probationary period for 6 months, no additional pay, and just see how she can handle this. Well, I knew I could handle it. I was already doing it. And I did. And I proved to them to earn that promotion. Now, they were very clear to me, we'll give you the promotion, but we can't give you the pay because you don't have that college education. So I continued with the promotion, and I was a top performer. I earned many accolades with my team of doing the job and then some without the pay. And so 18 years later, I decided it's time to move on, because now what was more important to me, Dr. James, was that promotion on my resume at the top and all my accolades versus that university education at the bottom. Okay. So, but guess what? I still struggle to earn interviews because I wanted to move to banks and business banking and SBA lending and all of that stuff. I still was passed over because I didn't have that college education on my resume. But yet they liked me because I was a top performer. And things started to change over the years where it seemed to many employers, this fire in the belly of some employees tends to give us more than the actual college education itself, right? So
Hmm.
they started to take me on. It was a rough road, but when they started to take me on, different banks, they started to stack up on my resume. And so now people were paying attention more to that top of the resume than the bottom where the education is. And if I had a chance to speak one on one like I am with you, most often they thought, I like this girl. She's a hard worker and we're going to swing on her. So now I'm entering into business banking, SBA lending, and it's a very male dominated industry. Um, and I'm up against the same scenario where any kind of promotions or any kind of special rate that I might need to help get a deal done, any kind of exceptions to policies which are granted, were only granted to the guys. And it didn't matter what employer I was with, it was consistent. And it was very evident, and a lot of my female peers, the few that are in this industry, they agree that it's the same for them, that we just don't get the same treatment as the good old guys.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead,
Deb,
dear.
let me just jump in for a moment because you've
Yeah.
shared so much with listeners of this podcast. And
Mm-hmm.
it really seems as if from your talk and also from reading your profile that you have faced uh, all kinds of gender discrimination. And
Mm-hmm.
you also started a business. And it seemed to me that the reason you started your business was to kind of deal with some of the things that you dealt with
Mm-hmm.
in your past. So let me ask you this question: uh, What's the personal, that little thing that uh, lit the fire in you to do what you are now doing? Because you're working with women and
Mm-hmm.
especially minority population, and being a African American uh,
Mm-hmm.
gentleman myself, it's uh, it's very touching to me and very empowering to me to just hear somebody talk about this and to break out and start working in this arena. So talk a little bit about that. What was the fire that that was lit in you that caused you to do this, and also what how did you face this and how did you overcome it? And I think you've said a little bit about that in your
Mm-hmm.
talk, but just tell us a little bit more. You obviously your profile and your background is just so extensive, and I know is so much that we can talk about. We're not going to be able to deal with all of it, but I just want
Yeah.
you to kind of share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah. So through that career of mine of
Mhm,
navigating corporate as a white girl in an all male dominated industry, I saw enough internally.
mhm,
But Dr. James, I also witnessed a lot of disparity of applicants externally, business applicants, to the point of even as recent as right here, right now, I still experience it with my clients. Um, so through that time, I prayed a lot because I would raise my voice in corporate as to what I witnessed internally and externally, but it just put a target on my back where they would find a way to push me out. Um, you see, corporate today, and I hope and pray that they change, and there are some that are, but not all. But corporate today is more interested in the numbers, the number of loans and the profit that can be sustained. And where there is a breakdown would be the front end lenders that are talking to applicants every day. They tend to, some of them, they tend to cherry pick based on their own personal assumptions and biases. And I witnessed it enough that it just stirred up a fire in me. And when I knew I was going to exit corporate, I didn't know right away. I knew I was still going to do what I do today, but God spoke to me many times in my journaling and praying that that fire that was burning was to help others by creating solutions today that were my hurts of the past. So my solutions today are helping those that want to transfer into these established businesses with SBA have an equal, fair opportunity. That, we need to practice unity and diversity, Dr. James, and that's what I'm here to change the narrative of this industry in a positive fashion, to be a voice of reason on your podcast as I am today.
Well, I appreciate that. You are very inspiring, and obviously your background and your experiences is the reason you are where you are now. And I can feel that and sense that in our conversation. And I understand from talking with you that obviously faith has a lot to do with uh, what you're doing and how you have been empowered to work with the minority population. So I'm going to ask you actually, basically, I guess, two questions kind of combined. So, what are your concerns if these people who you're trying to work with seem not interested? How do you move forward working with them? And could you shed light on your personal journey, that led you to become the person that you are, advocating for equality and opportunity in the industry in which you're working?
Yes. So the first question, how do I navigate around what still is a challenge for not only my clients and myself? I'm positively persistent would be the best definition.
Okay.
And I'm not afraid to bring truth to a conversation and or question it as far as fair and equal treatment. So the current client that I'm working with right now, it took some time, but finally the business broker that chose not to accept her offer because of the color of her skin finally decided to work with us after almost 3 weeks of just ignoring our calls. And I kept telling him, I've been in this business, in this industry for now 15 years and longer as far as disparate treatment myself. And, please give us the opportunity and a fair chance. And I don't know what happened, if maybe my voice made him realize perhaps what might be a habit of some people. Maybe they grew up in this kind of a lifestyle. I don't know, but he now agreed. So you have to positively be persistent
Okay.
and share your message, your heart.
Okay. I see
Bashing
that.
people, bashing people doesn't win.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit there and point the fingers and say, you're doing this and you're doing that. But sometimes I think a lot of what we're doing is because we were raised and watched that maybe previously from our parents or other family members. I know I did. I witnessed a lot in my life with my mom that I didn't agree with. But some people might not have known better. So that works.
Okay.
And your second question, Can you remind me again,
Well, it
Dr.
was
James?
just I want to know uh, how could you shed, you know, light on your personal journey that led you to become the person that you are, you know,
Yeah,
advocating for equality and
thank
opportunity.
you. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Um, because I had a coach that I was working with when I was going to go out on my own. How do I present who I am? And she kept coming back to me that who is your number one applicant today, Deb? Who has always been granted the opportunity to acquire these established small businesses? Well, that was an easy answer. I told her a white male applicant all the time because they're the ones that were promoted in corporate. I was passed over. They were promoted in corporate. They earn more income. They were the breadwinner years ago. We're starting to even out the playing field. We're not there yet. But it was always, I told her, it was always the white male corporate. So when she knew I was going out on my own, Dr. James, her coaching method to me was, why would you discount your number one applicant who is going to provide you an income? And you know what that felt like? Like a sword in my heart, because that wasn't what was my burning desire. I told her, my coach, my burning desire is to help all of the people that have a different color skin or a different gender than the white men, because I was passed over and I've witnessed others be passed over, and that's who I want to help.
Okay.
And
Mm,
we still haven't agreed on that, but you know who I have agreed with, who is number one in my decision? The man upstairs.
I got you. I hear you well. I hear you well. Deb, um, I told you earlier that I am a uh, retired pastor of 2 months short of 33 years at the same church. And when I started this podcast, I wanted to do something that I felt was a continuation of my ministry by encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. I don't know everybody who listens to this podcast, but I know some because they have kind of responded and shared that
Mhm.
they appreciate the words that have been shared through my podcast. So, what I want to ask you, if somebody uh, who maybe who've had these setbacks as you've had,
Mhm.
uh, but find themselves kind of stuck, in a situation and don't know quite how to get out of it. Uh,
Mhm.
what words of encouragement, inspiration would you give to them that maybe could help them transform their lives?
Mm. Yes. There were many times throughout my corporate journey that I was treated differently, or toxic work environments, passed over by my white male counterparts, and I would have that target on my back, and I would just quit, because it just, other women and other men were very aware of what was going on internally and externally in these corporate lending loan shops. But here's what happened, Dr. James. The culture of silence grew like a weed and just choked everybody, to the point where if HR questioned, they wouldn't say anything. They would just say, oh, everything is fine, but they knew it wasn't. They didn't want a target on their back for fear of them being retaliated against. So, my feedback to your listeners would be, if you are one of them that feels what I have felt in corporate, being looked over, dismissed, finally, after several stops, my last employer, I was blessed to have met a man on LinkedIn who is a workforce attorney for women's rights in the workplace. And he told me two words And I'm going to share those two words with your listeners. If you are going through any kind of dismissal or disparate treatment because of your gender or because of the color of your skin, don't quit.
Mm.
And I'm going to share with you why, because he's an attorney and he shared these words with me. If you quit, they win. You don't have a case. And he told me 99.9% of the people that quit then come to him to file a case for discrimination. At that point, it's too late. There's no case. So my last stop, I didn't quit. Even though they did everything they could to push me out, I didn't quit because he was on my side, mentoring me and telling me just to hang in there as long as I could. My story is not over there yet, but there is a claim on record, and that's what matters most because eventually the system will catch up. Don't quit. Be strong.
It's kind of like what my mom told me when I was an attorney who got into gambling and lost everything I had, ended up committing a crime and serving some time. But when I got out, that's years ago, so I'm like 30 some years ago. And
Mhm.
one of the things my mom said to me was, you know, you can go lie down in the ditch if you want to, or you can rub your head in the sand. But some of these same folks will come and continue to put uh, sand or dirt on you and push your head further into the sand. But if you get out of the ditch, if you take your head out of the sand, some of these same folks will give you a helping hand. So it was
Mhm.
kind of like telling me, you know, don't give in to this, don't give up. And I hear you saying the same thing for people who are in these situations with their jobs. You know, don't quit. Don't just let them have the upper hand on you. So that's very powerful, and I can really understand exactly where you're coming from. Listeners,
Mhm.
hang with us because I'm we're going to come back with Deb to give some more good insight on where she is. This is such a good conversation. We're going a little over the time that I had allotted, but I do want to ask a few more questions. But first of all, I want to ask Deb if somebody's interested in how they can get in touch with you or contact you, or I don't know if you have any books or pamphlets or anything of that nature that you would like to share. Could you do that for listeners of this
Right.
podcast now?
Yes, yes. My website is my first and last name, Dr. James, debcurtis.com. And you can reach me on there as well. There's a contact page. I don't have a book yet, but a lot of people have shared with me I need to write one. So that's on my agenda. And I also am working on creating a community of people that are aspired to be a small business owner of an established business. Of course, I take on clients one on one, but I want to create a community where we all meet together, just like church. We lift each other up in communities, right?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
weren't meant to do life alone. So, debcurtis.com is my website.
Okay. Do you do any speaking engagements, Deb?
Yes, I
Okay.
love to speak.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. All right, listeners, you've heard that. We hopefully that you will keep that as you move forward. And if you need some advice, you know how to contact Deb Curtis. Deb, let me ask you just a couple more questions as we bring this to a conclusion. I do want to know what are some of the biggest setbacks you face in your career, and how have you overcome them? Can you just
Mhm.
just share a few of those?
Yeah, probably one of the consistent setback in my career was always listening to what a supervisor had to say about me
Hmm.
being less than or not enough. Kind of back to that first employer where I had to stay positively persistent. I think the hardest journey for me was, and even today still, Dr. James, is just sometimes I feel like, why me all the time? But I know why. I know what the answer is. God sent me on this journey, I'm convinced, because he knew I know how to use my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew my hurt was similar to so many others. And I'm not afraid to speak up. So we know that. My employers all knew that. She'll speak up truth because that's who she is. But remember, that's where the target was put on my back. So God's like, okay, those targets are no longer on your back, dear Deb. Now you are a child of the one true King, and you can share with others that are feeling what you went through and let them know, don't quit, and seek out other opportunities. And if you want to learn more, just let's talk.
Mm.
So those challenges turned into my solutions today for my client, which is now my small business.
I love that. I love that. That's very empowering, Deb. Let me ask you this last question, because obviously I can feel this spirituality within you as you talk, and so I know you look to a higher power for a lot. Well, I should say for everything that you basically are doing, and you say that your life mantra, is God, grit, and grace, and how it speaks volume about your resilience and faith. So, can you share how this creed has helped you navigate life storms and how it continues to guide your journey, especially in light of your recent embrace of forgiveness?
Yeah, you're right on the same level with me in the moment here. I can do all things with God, grit, and grace.
Mm,
And I look back at the days as that abandoned little girl and not having her biological mom in her life for all those years, and all of the challenges through high school, through that first job and the career. Many tears were cried, but I always talked to God about it and prayed to Him. And a lot of grit had to be in my character to really fight to get through in a positive manner to where I am today. It wasn't easy. There weren't a lot of wins along the journey, but a lot of lessons were learned. And now today, I have that power in my heart, which is from God, to help others that are in that same situation that I was for most of my life realize there are other opportunities out there, and don't quit, but realize, have that plan B ready to move forward. God has been special. He's answered my prayers. They don't always come right away. I always wanted a family, Dr. James, going through the broken family and then the broken first marriage that I had. He was an alcoholic, domestic abuse. So I always prayed for a family. And you know what is beautiful about this story as we close out here soon? I now am a grandma of 4 grandchildren, all under the age of 3. 2 more are on the way. And my mom, who missed 40 years of my life, is back in my life because the Lord taught me how to forgive. And all these years later, we're talking a long time, those prayers I asked God, I just want a normal family, they're here today. And now, all those hurts through corporate America being dismissed and treated differently, I now own a business and I help others feel seen. I help others excel. I help others feel they are worth it,
mm.
because that's what God has told me and called me to do.
Well said. And there you have it. Deb Curtis, who is a remarkable woman who has overcome many obstacles in her life and her career. And I'm sure that you're going to love her after listening to her great story. And until next time, peace and blessings to each of you.